This roach is trying to get out. I put Vaseline on the edges, so I don't think you're gonna go anywhere, bro. My cat is trying to play with my tripod right now. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're brand new, my name is Kristen, and if you enjoyed this video, hit the subscribe button and give it a thumbs up. Helps my channel out. My cat is trying to play with my tripod right now. Oh, the joys of having kittens, which I still need to introduce you guys to and introduce you to all of my animals in general, because there are some that I don't have anymore and there are some new ones. Today I thought I would do a little tour of my Panther Chameleon's enclosure, just to kind of go over kind of the things that you have to have for a chameleon, things that are important, things that are helpful, and things that are kind of just extra or different options you can, you know, have in your enclosure. And I'm going to apologize in this video too that it is echoey. I'm standing in what is going to be our dining room, and we don't have a rug in here yet. We just kind of got finished remodeling our kitchen and dining room and all that. Still needs a rug, so it's very echoey. So let's go ahead and get started. This will just hopefully be a pretty quick video of me kind of going over everything, and I'm going to link you guys to pretty much everything you see in my Panther Chameleon's enclosure, and I will link it to you in the description box below. I also have an Amazon storefront where I link out pretty much everything. I get a lot of my stuff from Amazon, so that's pretty much where it's all at, because it's just so easy to get. So let's go ahead and take a look at my chameleon's enclosure. Now, I did want to just put a disclaimer that the way that I have put together my chameleon's enclosure may not look anything like the way that you do it. You still may have everything that you need for your chameleon. So I'll kind of go over some of the really important things. When I was really, really young, I had a chameleon, had two actually in the same enclosure, like a moron, because Google wasn't what it was today, and the pet store told me I could. I think I was like 17 years old or 18, and one of the most important things that I did not have in there was the proper source of water and how I was offering it, and they passed away, and that just like breaks my heart today, because they were probably just so damn thirsty. So I'm gonna be going over that with you guys, and there are so many different options these days for chameleons, so I'll kind of get into all of that. But whether you are looking to get a chameleon or you already have one, it's awesome that you're watching this and doing your research, trying to provide the best home for a chameleon you possibly can, because let's be honest, we snatched them out of the wild and we owe them that much at the very minimum. Now, let's get into it. I am going to go handheld on this, so hopefully it's not too shaky. I do need to reattach the bottom of this. My chameleon just shed and is actually still in the process of shedding. So let's go over. Clyde is over here. Hi, babes. What are you doing? We got some roaches down in here. Let's go ahead and go through this. So one of the most important things for a chameleon that people tend to forget how, or they don't know how to offer it, or the person at the pet store doesn't know, is water. So I have a little dripper. I've taken the hose off and I just have it sitting up here. There's so many different ways you can do this. There are even machines that will sit in like I'll put it on the screen, but it sits in like a bowl of water and circulates the water back up. The problem with those is that you cannot clean where the water goes up and out to the leaves. So this tends to get this part that's like the stem of the plant gets super, super rusty and just full of bacteria that you just can't clean out. So I opted for this. The hose on these tends to get kind of nasty with buildup. So I opted to just do without, and I clean this out at least once a week with hot water and soap and everything. So you want to have active water dripping onto leaves. Some people have a mist king, or they mist throughout the day, and that is good because a chameleon will not drink freestanding water. If you put a bowl of water down at the bottom like this and left it there, your chameleon would die from not getting enough water and die from dehydration. So seeing the dew, as it would be in nature, drip onto leaves, and water or rainwater dripping onto the leaves really entices them to go take a drink. Just like animals like to have insects that move fast, this is kind of the same thing for chameleons. So I have it dripping from leaf to leaf, and he usually comes over here and sits on this and drinks. I think he's already trying to tuck himself in for the night. So it's like not even 4 o'clock, but he's trying to tuck himself in for the night. So he's not interested in anything that's going on over here. So I'll probably turn this off in a second. But I do have a bowl of water catching most of it. However, it does start to drip off of other areas like this. So I do have to adjust these leaves every now and then. So you can also mist. I do mist. I will show this to you guys. This has been a godsend. I purchased this on Amazon. You pump it and it sprays out water, which is super useful for using on all of my enclosures. So I just pour my water in there, and I used to use a spray bottle, and with how many reptiles I have, my hand would get so sore. So switch to this. This is kind of a must have. I think even if you just have one reptile, well worth it. So that's kind of like the water for chameleons. They cannot have freestanding water if they will not drink from it. It can be sitting there and they could be the most dehydrated they've ever been in their entire little lives. They will die. They have no idea that it's there. They need that like water dripping or collecting on a leaf. That's just how they do it in the wild. So you want to recreate that as best possible. And the reason I don't use a Mist King is because I do not have plexiglass on all the sides of my enclosure, because I want to have as much airflow as I can right now. So I don't do that, but it tends to get very messy and can get very messy around the cage and in the bottom if you're spraying water all over your cage multiple times a day. This works for some people. Currently does not work for me. Speaking of airflow, airflow is super important for a chameleon. They tend to get respiratory infections quite easily because they need a very humid environment, usually around 70%, give or take. So typically, you know, you need to keep them very hydrated with misting, and it can get challenging to do so because they need to be in like a mostly screen enclosure because they really need that airflow for their lungs. So that can get a little bit challenging. Do not put your chameleon in a glass enclosure. This is not something that's going to work. Chameleons, as you probably know, love to climb, so they need a good height variation. And it needs to be high enough so that during the day when they feel like basking, they can get to their basking spot, and then they can thermoregulate and go to lower branches to become cooler. That is something you need to create a gradient for them of temperatures. I just put this guy in here. I typically have a very good idea of what this cage needs to look like and how often it needs to be sprayed. So I don't usually have one of these in here, but I thought I'd lead by example. You should probably always have one of those in there just so you know what's going on and how humid it is. Another great way to maintain humidity is having a fogger, like a Reptifogger. My favorite fogger is not a Reptifogger. My favorite fogger is linked in the description box below. It's a top fill, which I never thought about until I had as many reptiles as I do. Get a top fill. Pulling the humidifier, like water chamber, like off every single time and carrying it over to the sink is like absolutely obnoxious. It's so nice to be able to just come up and fill it when it needs it. I like using timers for humidifiers. If you don't, you're gonna have too much humidity, not enough humidity, or you're just gonna go through water super, super fast, or all of the above. So I like to get timers. You can get like the little ones from Target. I'll link you guys below if you just need like one plug for the humidifier. Of course, you're gonna need a power strip that has a timer for the rest of the components of the chameleon's cage, which I'll show you right now. So right here is my heat light. I would prefer that this would be a little further away from this branch, but I do have this very close to the top, which I'm not a huge fan of. However, I will say that the wattage of the bulb is as hot as it needs to be for how far he is away from it, if that makes sense. Like for instance, I would not put a 100-watt bulb right there. He could potentially burn himself. Chameleons don't typically always move out of the way when they're feeling a little too warm. 95% of the time they do, but you definitely wouldn't want to have something that close that is like 100-watt. So I have the perfect amount of wattage in here. I just prefer to have a broader basking area. So I will reconfigure that pretty soon here. But you're gonna need a heat source. And if you have live plants, you're gonna need an LED light like this. And then I've got his UVB light back over there, and I have them all plugged into a timer like this. This is a Zoo Med timer. There are multiple brands that you can get that are cheaper than Zoo Med, but I just bought a bunch of these in the beginning of owning reptiles, and so I have a bunch of them. And you can set the time here, and that works really well. Mr. Clyde, you're shedding. How's that going, buddy? Looks like you missed a couple spots. Just a couple. Hi, beautiful boy. LED is not necessary unless you're growing plants in here, live plants, which I usually like to do, but haven't done, as this is not a forever setup for Clyde. And you're gonna need a heat source and a UVB light that is the proper UVB output for how far away it is from the branches for the type of animal that you have under it. All of these plants I have gotten off of Amazon. I actually really like the way that they look, but I definitely do think that some real plants in here would be a great addition. However, most people don't want to or cannot keep live plants alive in the enclosure. So, you know, and you also have to make sure they're safe for a chameleon. So, I have never had issues with my chameleon and fake plants though. I have never once had a chameleon try and eat any of the fake plants in the enclosure or anything of the sort. They are not that stupid typically. I'm sure it has happened, but I've never had the issue. So everything you see in here is actually real wood and vine and all that, with the exception of this vine and this one right here. So someone told me the other day that this enclosure setup is completely wrong because I have vines in here and that can cause bacteria. Well, newsflash, everything, whether it's live, well not live, but like real wood like this or not, can have bacteria on it, especially in an enclosure that's kept very humid. So generally speaking, you know, none of this is an issue. I've never had an issue with a chameleon having a bacterial infection. Newsflash, chameleons do not eat with their hands, they eat with their tongues. So even if they do step on something that may have a piece of bacteria or a piece of poop on it, they're not gonna necessarily get a horrible bacterial infection and die on you. So I have found that this works just great. My chameleon looks amazing. All of my chameleons have looked amazing. So yeah, this is what I do. What you're gonna wanna provide when it comes to twigs and branches, obviously any real branches, if you pull them from the outdoors, that's a wonderful option, but you wanna make sure that you look up how to put them in the oven or bleach soak them to make sure that there are no parasites living inside this that could be harmful to your pet. So make sure you check into that, but you want to provide enough foliage where your chameleon is able to hide and get out of sight so that they feel safe and secure. And then with your branches and your vines, obviously you're gonna want a majority of these going horizontally as opposed to being upright. They really like to climb around all of these and climb up and down things. And if your chameleon is climbing on your screen a lot, I'm gonna say that most likely it is because you do not have enough branches in here. Some chameleons just will do that no matter what you do, and you can't stop them from doing it, and they have their mind made up. So if you have a very stubborn chameleon like that, then that just, it's gonna be challenging to get them not climb on the screen. And another thing you want to consider when choosing all of these is you want to make sure that you have a lot of different diameters of different things for your chameleon to touch and grab onto. So some smaller ones, some bigger ones. They really need a good variety to experience and explore throughout their cage. This is good for them, especially when they're small. They need something very thin like this to be able to grab onto. One thing that you want to stay away from is you want to stay away from just using bamboo sticks in here. I've seen some cages where they just have tons and tons of bamboo sticks. Unfortunately, they're just really smooth and not the best thing for your chameleon to grab onto. These have a little bit of grit, a little bit of texture, much easier for your chameleon to use. Also, those cages, typically all of those bamboo pieces are the exact same diameter, which does not give your chameleon a variation or a variety of things to grab. With their little tiny chameleon mitts. I wish that Clyde would, hey buddy, hi. You wanna come over and say hi? Not really? Hi pretty boy. Hi my pretty boy. Hi. Oh, you getting scary? Or you don't like the camera? You didn't like the camera? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to piss you off. Let's talk a little bit about plants and vines and all of that kind of stuff. So obviously the best thing to do is to have live plants in your enclosure because it's the most natural looking and feeling thing for your chameleon. The thing is, I don't really have that great of a green thumb, so anytime I've tried to have live plants in my enclosures, I pretty much always kill them. However, the most important piece to this is having the proper LED lighting for your plants. I thought the UVB lights in the enclosure were perfect, right? Because it's just like the sun. No, I'm not gonna pretend to understand it, but it is not the same thing. So you'll have to do some research. I will not be a good resource for that. All I know is that the LED lights that I have now would help keep plants alive. But are they enough? I'm not really sure. I would love to put some live plants in here. I need to do a little bit more research about how to secure them to the side, all that good stuff. But once he's in a more permanent enclosure, I will be diving deep, deep, deep down into having real plants and all that good stuff. Because at the end of the day, they're better. Let's talk a little bit about food. So in this cage, I have 3 different food options and areas to put that food. So the reason why is because my chameleon can be finicky sometimes and I like to offer different types of insects. So back here, I have this setting on these branches, which works out really well. I have lobster and red runner roaches in there, which is why I have Vaseline on the top. You can see this guy trying to get out, but they will not cross over that barrier. So they've been stuck in there. This is also called a gallery shooter. You can make one of your own for free, pretty much out of like a milk jug or something. I purchased this one. The top comes off and it's very easy to clean, which is why I just ended up buying this one instead of making my own. But I have that hanging. This is really good for like crickets. Dubia roach will sometimes climb up here. Superworms sometimes will, but I tend to put the superworms in here or I put them in here. I had some black soldier fly larvae hatching, so I put him in there so he could eat the flies. But this is like a magnetic feeding ledge. These are really great. The only thing that I've found with this, with a chameleon, is that you really need to, on the underside of this, do a Velcro strip, because as soon as he grabs something out of here with his tongue, typically this flies out and all of the food ends up down there. So I need to put a Velcro piece on this guy again, but I have 3 different feeding options for him, and that's kind of how I like to do it. A lot of people like to just put their crickets in here and let them free range, and I will do that with a few crickets because he does like to hunt. It's very good for them. However, a lot of times, because this cage is so large, they tend to just end up dying or drowning themselves in the water before he finds them. So if he's hanging out on one of these branches, sometimes I'll like sprinkle a couple here and there, and he loves to go and find them. But generally speaking, his food sources are going to be in here, here, or here. And that is pretty much it when it comes to the husbandry of a panther chameleon. It is very similar for like a veiled chameleon, but don't take my word for it, do your own research. If I've missed anything or you have any questions or need clarification, please leave your questions in the comments below. I have pregnancy brain real bad right now, and I swear I'm like, there's something that I have missed. So again, I will link you to everything in the description box below. Hopefully this video was useful for you guys and not too damn echoey, although I can hear myself echoing right now, so I'm pretty sure it is. We'll try and get that worked on. But thanks so much for watching, guys. Subscribe, and we will see you in the next video. Bye, y'all.